very, very much like a regular equation, except this uses one of those inequality symbols. We looked at them when we were doing some of that graphing stuff when we were shading. They use our less than or our greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, instead of equal sign. For the most part, we treat it exactly the same. We can still do operations on either side of the sign, trying to get down to a solution. Our solutions just wind up with significantly more options than x equals. Like we might not have x equals 4, it could be x greater than 4. Thank you, dear. And we are going to practice solving with these inequalities today. So we're again going to start out with some real simple ones, kind of refreshing us, remembering some of the things about inequalities that make stuff a little weird. So on something like this, what do I need to do to get the x by itself? Subtract 2. I can subtract 2 from both sides of my inequality sign. And that's going to tell us our solution here is x is greater than 2. So we're still using those same operations. There's only one of them that makes it go a little funky. What are we going to do on this one? Bless you. Divide by what? By 3. And so we're going to have that these 3's cancel out, and we get that x is less than or equal to 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So we have x greater than 2, x less than or equal to 2 as our two solutions here. Apparently I was in a very 2 mood when I wrote it. So it's still the same operations. We're following the same pathways. We just have a different symbol in the middle, and sometimes it throws us off. So it just takes some time and some practice. The reasons these are really different is because my solution isn't just that x is 2. It's that if we had a number line, it would be all the numbers bigger than 2. So if I was to color it in on the number line, it would start at 2 and be bigger. We're going to use open circle at 2 because it doesn't have the equals to. Very much like this one would be, I don't like that. This one would be a dotted line if we did it as lines. Just since we're a little bit more familiar with that. It's going to have an open circle, not a closed circle. If it's not equal to, it's an open circle. If we want to draw this piece on the number line, its x is equal to 2 or anything smaller. So if it starts at 2, it can equal to, so we'll do a closed-in circle. And then we color all the numbers smaller. Anything smaller than 2. X could be 1. X could be 0. X could be negative 500 million. It's smaller than 2. So I have a lot of options on our solutions. It's not just one point. Okay, we're going to practice this a bunch today. Because then it's going to start to smush together, and we're going to have more than one thing at one time. And again, we have a few different ways you can approach this. There's not one right way to get through this. What's your instinct on this left-hand one? What's your instinct on this? 2 times the quantity, x minus 7, is greater than or equal to 4. Divide by 2 on both sides. Excellent start. If we divide by 2 on both sides, that 2 and that 2 cancel out. And we're left with x minus 7 is greater than or equal to 2. Then what? Add 7. So we're going to have that x is greater than or equal to 9. So if we were to sketch this on a number line, we would start at 9. We would have a closed circle because it's equal to, and since x needs to be bigger, we're going to color this side. Because anything 9 or bigger is our solution. We have one funky rule with inequalities that we have to remember. And we'll see that in the next one. Because on this next one, what do we need to do to get x by itself? Say that. Divide. By what? By negative 2. When we divide an inequality by a negative number, what happens? What do we need to do? Flip the sign. When you multiply or divide by a negative number, your sign changes directions. So x is going to be less than. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, the sign changes directions. You can word that however the heck you want. It's never going to add or subtract an equals to opportunity. But it will just change which direction it's facing. And if we think about that really closely, negative 2 times what? In order to be bigger than 8 when it's multiplied, it has to multiply by a small negative number. Negative 4 would make it equal to, but anything smaller than negative 4, if x is negative 5, negative 2 times negative 5 gives us positive 10. Negative 2 times negative 10 would give us positive 20. And those are both bigger than 8. So you have to go further negative to make this work. So we multiply or divide, you have to, by a negative number, you have to change the sign. Okay? A few more of these. So this time it has an n. Doesn't change what we do. Sometimes they're going to have different variables, and that's okay. So what can we do here to get n by itself? Super close. Plus 3n. Let's get the n's together. I need these n's to go over there. So we're going to add 3n. Add 3n. So we're going to have 20 is greater than 10n. And what do we do to get n by itself? Divide by 10. To get that n is, which one, greater than or less than? Do I got to change my sign here? Nope. If it's not negative, drop it down. 20 divided by 10 gives us 2. So if our n is 2, when we kind of sketch this guy out, we're going to use an open circle because it's not equals to, which means I need a slightly less chunky pen. Open circle. And my n is smaller than the 2, so we're going to go this way. Remember, the crocodile always eats the bigger one. Boop. I am a fine artiste, and that is not at all nightmare fuel. That is the scariest crocodile I've ever drawn. Okay, now he's less horrifying. Slightly less horrifying. The crocodile always is the bigger one, so the 2 is bigger than the N. That's doing too much. Even I think that's doing too much. There we go. Just leave it right there. I have a friend who's a literal rocket scientist. Like, she works at Rolls-Royce in the aerospace department. And I asked her one day, I was like, do you still think about the alligator eating the bigger one? She said, every single time. And she is a literal rocket scientist. So it is 100% okay to use the tools our 3rd and 4th grade teachers taught us about the crocodile eating the bigger one. Or the alligator, however you know, whichever aquatic carnivorous animal suits your fancy. And I have a friend who's a literal rocket scientist who still thinks about the alligator eating the bigger one. Okay? Valid tools. All right. Let's look at this one. What are we going to do to get our z by itself? Times by -4. We're going to times by -4. And an alarm bell needs to go off in our brain when we're dealing with negatives and inequalities. So this -4 cancels out that -4. It's exactly why we picked it. So we wind up with z. I always put a little crossbar on my z's. Otherwise, because of my handwriting, they start to look like 2's. So just so we're aware, those are z's. And we have 2 times -4, which is going to give me -8. What happens to my inequality? Flips. Changes direction. It's the exact same piece, we just flop it. Face it the other way. So our z is less than -8. So when we sketch that, less than or equal to, excuse me. So we'd have our -8, and my z can equal -8, so we use a solid dot, and smaller. You can always pick something from this section that we color in and test it. -10 or -12 divided by -4 would be +3, and that is greater than 2. You can go back and test it. That would be a good way to check something if we feel we need to. Okay, how are we feeling on those? Because it's going to kick up a notch, because the book is a jerk sometimes. But we're going to take a deep breath, and we're going to be okay, because they put decimals in it. We treat them just the same. We've got calculators. We can do it like that. Or if we really genuinely hate the decimals, but we don't hate big numbers, multiply it by about 10 if you would like to get rid of the decimals. So what do you guys want to do as our first move here? What's your instinct? Do you want to get rid of the decimals and make it less gross? Or are we okay with decimals? Let y'all pick. We got -5.6n plus 12.9 greater than or equal to -71.1. Yeah, and we can leave this as decimals. It's totally fine. We have calculators. They live in our pockets. We can rack this. So absolutely, we need to get those numbers together. So I need to subtract the 12.9 from this side. I need my numbers together and on the opposite side of my sign from my letter. So that's going to give us -5.6n is greater than or equal to because I love when I did it in my notes that I copied the numbers down wrong. 1 minus should get -84. that what y'all that? Because I 100% copied the numbers down wrong in my notebook when I did it. Love that for me so much. What do we do to figure out what n is? Divide by negative 5.6. Divide by negative 5.6. When we divide by negative 5.6, these guys cancel out. That's the whole point. That's why we picked the negative 5.6, and we get n. What is our inequality going to be? Greater than or less than? Less than. We divided by a negative number. Anytime we multiply or divide by a negative number, your sign changes direction. Multiply or divide by a negative number, change the sign. Then we're going to do 84 divided by 5.6. What do we get? 15. So if we were to sketch this out on a number line, it would start at 15. We would have a closed circle at 15, and we would color smaller numbers. Sketching it out like this is sometimes really helpful to see options for solutions, especially when we're needing to check things or when we're needing to find solutions to something. So sketching out a little number line is very helpful sometimes. We only have one more problem today, but it is a story problem. So several fluffy destroyer of worlds looks that. That's one of my favorite memes, is the tiny puppy with the evil. I am Fluffy, destroyer of worlds. It's my favorite meme. I love that one. All right, so we have a vaguely relevant story problem. The recommended daily intake of calcium for teens, oh my gosh, that's you guys, is 1,300 milligrams. Jake gets 237 milligrams of calcium from a multivitamin he takes every morning, and each glass of skim milk he drinks contains 302 milligrams of calcium. How many glasses of milk does he need to drink each day? So we need to find some pieces in here and write ourselves an equation or an inequality. I'm going to give us a big old hint. Since we're on an inequality day, it's going to be an inequality. Go ahead.
Would it be 237 plus 302? Well, I would just say G with the variable is greater than or equal to 1,300?
Yeah. So we're going to look up a whole bunch of those pieces right there. Okay? So, yes, you are on exactly the right track there. So the 237... he just takes that once, right? He's not like down in multivitamins like they're Skittles. So we just have the one multivitamin. He's just taking that once. But then he's going to combine that with the 302 for every glass he drinks. So 302 times G works for the number of glasses of milk. You could do X if you prefer that, because we work with X and Y significantly more often. You could do M for milk. You could do a heart because we love to do math. You could do a poop guy emoji because we're feeling a little less positive. It's a variable. It does not matter, genuinely. I'm just terrible at drawing, which is why I don't do emojis. I mean, y'all saw my alligator. That was bad. They get worse. Just wait till we do quadratics and I try and draw a dolphin. I'm not good at art. Art is not my strong suit, but that's okay. So we do know that this needs to be a total of, his goal here is 1,300. So that's our total. What we need to do now is figure out which inequality it is. Do we want this side to be bigger, or do we want that side to be bigger? We want the left side bigger or the right side bigger?
Left side.
The left side bigger. Because it's okay if he has more calcium. It's okay if he goes over. As long as it's not like the daily intake of like arsenic or whatever. It can be bigger. I would like the alligator to eat more calcium. Could it equal exactly 1,300? Would that meet his requirements? Yeah. So again, finding the pieces in the stories is the hardest part. This is the part where we need to slow down and make sure we find all the chunks. This is the part we tend to rush because we hate the writing equation parts most. Like, we're like, I'm just going to write a thing and we're going to call it good. And then we take our time on the solving when really we need to flip that. We have been solving for a while. We know how to solve. We can solve stuff. Slow down on the equation writing part because this is the hard part on these story problems. That is 100% the hardest part. So once we have our equation, we're going to come through and solve it. What do we need to do to solve this? Minus 237 on both sides. So we're going to have 302G is greater than or equal to 1073? Is that what it is? 1063. It was close. Then what do? Divide by what? 302. I'll write it small. So we get that G needs to be greater than or equal to what? What is our G greater than or equal to? 3.52. So how much milk does he need to drink? 3.5 glasses or more. That's a 2. So he can drink 3.5 glasses or more. At 3.5, he's right at his daily recommended intake. Now, real world, there is in fact a maximum daily regulated intake because you can have too much calcium. But that would be like a gallon of milk a day, I think, as I recall. Not a doctor, not my jam. But, yeah, it's kind of the vibe. All right, so you guys can now finish out that worksheet, and you have 20 minutes to do so. So that 2-1 that I gave you guys yesterday, the back side has some inequalities on it. If you need another copy of it, they're behind the tree in the gold folder. So the back side of 2-1 you can now do. You should be able to do everything on it. So you've got time now to work on it, ask questions, work with each other, whatever we need to so that we do not take homework home over this long weekend. Let's do that. I don't want to be working over the weekend. I'm going to have to, but I don't want to. Okay, so make sure, give yourselves time for a break. So let's be where we need to be before we leave today. Chapter 2 test is currently scheduled for the 22nd, which is in 3 Fridays. Okay? But that is all I got for you today. Short Friday. Let's finish out 2-1. Be ready to rock and roll on Tuesday when I see you next.